Before we get started, go ahead and do that simple thing that changes a lot. Scroll down, hit the like button, and subscribe to the channel. This really helps to spread the content to more fans, more basketball lovers who, just like you, want to understand what is really behind the scenes, behind the news, and the possible big moves around the league. If you live the game, like to talk about the roster, trades, on-court chemistry, and everything that happens away from the spotlight, turn on the notification bell as well so you don't miss any updates. Once you've done that, let's get straight to the point, because what is happening with the Golden State Warriors right now goes much deeper than just wins and losses in the standings. The team started this season in an inconsistent way, with ups and downs that have left the fan base restless. It's not that dominant Golden State that steamrolled opponents, knocked down strings of three-pointers, and gave off that feeling of total control. It's a team that, at various moments, seems to be searching for a new identity, trying to balance the weight of experience with the urgency of refreshing the roster. Yet even in the middle of this roller coaster, one topic has started to grow and take over the conversation. The possibility of a trade that would completely change the direction of the franchise. This is not just any trade. We're talking about a name that, just by being mentioned, already changes the mood. Giannis Antetokounmpo, a player who redefines what it means to be dominant in the modern NBA. Size, strength, mobility, defensive impact, offensive aggressiveness, the ability to carry a team on his back. It's no coincidence that every time people talk about potential destinations for him, Golden State comes up in the conversation. And even though the team doesn't have all the future assets that other franchises can offer, the package they'd still be able to put together would be anything but small. The big question is, to bring in someone of that level, the price does not come cheap. There is no scenario in which a player of that caliber changes teams without a huge cost, both in players and draft picks. And this is where the conversation starts to get heavy, because according to information circulating behind the scenes, there is a central point in this equation. There is basically only one name in the league for whom Golden State would even consider giving up one of its most symbolic figures. And that name is precisely Giannis. That means that, for the team to truly put itself at the negotiating table, some pillars of the current roster would have to be discussed. Among the names frequently mentioned are Jonathan Kuminga and Brandon Podziemski, two pieces that represent at the same time the present and the future of the franchise. Kuminga, with his absurd physical upside, and Podziemski, with his feel for the game and on-court IQ, currently form a young core that Golden State knows can grow a lot over the next few years. But when the topic is bringing in one of the best players of this generation, the debate stops being purely technical and becomes almost philosophical. What is worth more, a promising future or the chance to get back to the top immediately? And there is another delicate point. It's not just about talent, it's about money. Giannis's contract is massive, with an average annual salary that easily surpasses the $50 million mark. To squeeze that number into Golden State's payroll, it's not enough to move one or two guys from the end of the bench. It would be necessary to dismantle a significant part of the current structure. It's cap math, it's league rules, it's the hard reality. To bring in someone of that level, someone important would have to go. Behind the scenes, some say that if a big-name veteran were to be included in this trade, there would only be one acceptable scenario: letting go of a historic leader, but only if the return were exactly the Greek superstar. No other player would justify a rupture of that magnitude. This line, which circulates among reporters and analysts, shows just how serious this potential move is. We're not talking about empty rumors. We're talking about a discussion that directly touches the emotional identity of the franchise. Imagine the impact of that in the locker room. For years, the backbone of this team has been built on trust, loyalty, and bonds forged in finals, comebacks, titles, and painful defeats. Taking a piece out of that core is not just a question of tactical fit. It is messing with the soul of the group. It is looking at a player who has sacrificed his body and his career for the project and saying, "It's time for us to go our separate ways." No matter how good the incoming player is, no matter how dominant the reinforcement may be, This kind of decision leaves scars. At the same time, there is the cold side of sporting analysis. Giannis is one of those talents that do not appear twice in the same era. Putting him alongside one of the greatest shooters in history is playing with an offensive and defensive potential that few can even picture. Think of an offense where the opponent has to choose, send a double team at the unstoppable driver, or sprint desperately after the shooter, who, if left free for a second, changes the score. Defensively, you would have a team capable of protecting the paint, switching assignments, contesting shots, and still getting out in transition at speed. It's a scenario that scares any opponent. But to reach that point, Golden State would have to do something that, for many years, seemed unthinkable. Put on the table players who today are seen as untouchable, or at the very least, extremely hard to include in any offer. Kuminga, for example, is at a pivotal moment in his career. With a new contract and expectations of further development, there are already clear signs that the team is open to trading him. The impression is that the front office's plan may well be to use him as one of the main assets in a bigger package. And it's not just him. Podziemski is also part of this debate, even though, because of his age and the impact he has already shown, he is a piece many fans would hate to see leaving. However, when you weigh up what it means to lose two talented youngsters against what it means to bring in a player who immediately puts you among the top favorites for the title, the discussion moves to another level. It's that well-known dilemma: bet on 10 years of potential or on 3 or 4 years of an absolutely real shot at a championship. Reports going around suggest that if there were real openness from Milwaukee to negotiate, the Californian franchise would indeed be able to put together a tempting package. The problem is that, once again, everything comes down to a central decision. Would the team be ready to break, even if only partially, with the figure of a leader who helped build the entire recent dynasty? Many analysts say that in terms of on-court impact, Giannis would be a natural upgrade, especially in age and physical dominance. But within a group, not everything is measured only in numbers. There is respect, there is history, there is gratitude. As if this whole saga were not enough, there is still the weight of the present moment. While people talk about possible blockbuster trades, the team has recently dealt with something that hits every fan hard: the absence of its main star for a stretch of games. A thigh injury sidelined the point guard for quite some time, and that exposed a problem many had already been talking about. Without him, the team loses not only points, but direction, confidence, and a reference point. The latest reports indicate that he has gone back to full practice, even taking part in team activities, which suggests he is very close to returning to the court. There was even some expectation that he might be available already for the next game, which would be a huge relief for the fans and the locker room. Because even with problems in the standings, knowing that your main star is on the way back changes the mood, changes the energy, changes the sense of urgency. It is worth remembering that this season, he has not had to deal only with that specific injury. There have also been illnesses, ankle issues, and the natural wear and tear that comes with carrying the team for years. Even so, while dealing with all of this, he has still maintained impressive numbers, averaging more than 27 points per game, shooting almost 50% from the field, and also contributing in rebounds and assists. That shows that when he is healthy, he continues to be the beating heart of Golden State. And it is precisely for that reason that the idea of pairing this star with a physical monster like Giannis makes so much noise. Try to imagine the league's reaction. Try to imagine defenders' reaction. It would be a combination of technical talent and physical force that would put Golden State back at the center of the conversation about favorites, not just as a competitive team, but as a real threat to the summit. At the same time, some argue that the team should first sort out its other problems before thinking about such a radical change. Defensive adjustments, a clear definition of the rotation, the role of the young players, the minute limit for the veterans, adapting to the league's increasingly intense physical pace. If you push all your chips in on one superstar but do not fix the structural flaws, you run the risk of ending up with an unbalanced roster that depends too much on 2 or 3 pieces. and that, over a long season, can carry a very high price. What's curious is that, while some sources claim Golden State has, at certain points, already dropped out of the race, others insist the situation is still open and that the player's own will could weigh heavily in the final decision. Some say that the franchise he chooses as his preferred destination would indeed have an advantage in any negotiation should Milwaukee finally decide on a trade. If that is true, the future of a historic Golden State leader may be directly tied to Giannis's wishes. Think about that level of tension. On one side, a player who has built an entire career in the same jersey, acting as the brain, voice, and competitive soul of the team. On the other, the possibility of adding one of the greatest physical talents the league has ever seen, raising the team's competitive ceiling to an absurd level. In the middle of it all, young talents who could be shipped out as part of the package, and a fan base split between emotion and reason. While the headlines talk about trades, huge contracts, and behind-the-scenes conversations, on the court the team is fighting to get out of a rough stretch in the Western Conference. The string of defeats, the inconsistency in performances, and the absence of the main point guard in some games have created a sense of urgency. Every game without him felt like a reminder. Time is passing, the fuel of the original core is not endless, and the franchise needs to decide what story it wants to tell over the next few years. And that is why everything happening around Golden State right now is not just another random chapter. It is a turning point. Whether through a huge trade or through the full recovery of the current roster, what comes next will decide whether this franchise still has the strength to write new pages of glory or whether it will live only off the memory of what it has already achieved. And that is exactly why you, who have made it this far, are part of this conversation. Because a real fan does not follow only the score, but the context, the decisions, the behind-the-scenes, and the consequences of every move. If you enjoyed this video, if it helped you understand better everything that is at stake behind these rumors, drop a like down below, because that tells the platform this content is worth being shown to more fans like you. If you are not subscribed yet, take the chance now. Click on subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next breakdowns, possible updates on this whole Golden State saga, and any bombshell news that might come up. Also, leave a comment saying what you would do if you were in the front office's place. Would you risk everything for a superstar or keep the current core together? Your opinion matters a lot and helps build this community.